The Oblivion's Mercy hung in space like a predator, poised to strike its massive hull, gleaming under the distant light of Sol. From his command post, Admiral Varek observed the holographic representation of Earth, a swirling blue-green orb that had haunted the nightmares of the United Galactic Fleet for decades. His scaled fingers tapped against the metallic surface of the war table as he addressed the gathered representatives of the five empires. "The blockade is complete," Varek announced, his reptilian features impassive beneath the dim lights of the war room. "All 10,000 vessels are in position around Earth's solar orbit. No ship enters, no ship leaves." The Arcturians' cold yellow eyes swept across the faces of those assembled delegates from the Centauran Alliance, the Ilian Compact, the Syrian Dominion, and the Vegan Federation. Each represented one pillar of the greatest military coalition in the known universe, and each wore the same expression of grim satisfaction. Commander Salia, a slender Centauran, with iridescent skin that rippled with thought patterns, visible just beneath the surface, approached the hologram. "Admiral, with respect, I have reviewed the intelligence on these humans. Their technological advancement barely extends beyond their own moon. They've mastered neither faster-than-light travel nor quantum weaponry. Is this level of military response truly warranted?" Vrek's jaw tightened. In his 300 years of service spanning 17 planetary invasions and 3 intergalactic wars, he had never failed. His victories were flawless, his tactics precise, his conquests complete. He would not have his judgment questioned now, especially not before representatives of rival empires. "Commander Salia, your concerns are noted." His voice was smooth, controlled, betraying none of the irritation that flashed across his neural implant. "However, our intelligence suggests that humans possess certain anomalies, biological peculiarities that require caution." From the shadows at the rear of the chamber, Lieutenant Rico cleared his throat, the sound distinctly uncomfortable in the tense atmosphere. The Ilian bioengineer, with his multi-jointed limbs and compound eyes, had spent the past solar cycle analyzing what little data they had on human physiology. "The Admiral is correct," Rico said, his voice a soft buzz that nonetheless carried across the chamber. "Preliminary scans indicate potential for rapid adaptation. And there are rumors." He hesitated, compound eyes darting nervously. "Rumors that humans possess qualities beyond our current understanding." A Syrian delegate scoffed, the sound like grinding metal. "Superstition! Their planet is primitive. Their weapons are laughable. We should simply sterilize the surface and harvest what resources remain." Vrek raised a single clawed hand, silencing further discussion. "We will proceed according to protocol. First contact opportunity for surrender, then necessary action." His head tilted toward the vast viewing portal, where in the distance Earth continued its serene orbit, unaware of the armada that had come to claim it. "The decision has been made. Transmission begins in 1 standard hour." As the delegates dispersed, Commander Salia lingered near the holographic display, her fingertips passing through the image of Earth's moon. She had studied the transmissions intercepted from this isolated world, their music, their literature, their desperate messages flung into the void. Something about them troubled her, though she couldn't articulate what. "They're just primitives," Varek said, noting her interest. "Like so many others we've encountered." Salia's skin rippled with patterns that, had Varek been more familiar with Centauran emotional displays, might have registered as profound doubt. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "but I wonder if we truly understand what awaits us there." Vrek dismissed her concerns with a wave. In all his centuries commanding the Fourth Armada, he had never encountered a species that could withstand the united might of the Galactic Fleet. Humans would be no different. 1 standard hour later, Admiral Varek stood before the transmission array, his uniform immaculate posture rigid with authority. Behind him, the representatives of the 5 empires stood in formal arrangement, a display of unity meant to impress upon these primitives the futility of resistance. "Open channel to all Earth communication networks," Varek commanded. The ship's AI complied instantly, and a soft chime indicated the connection was established. People of Earth. Varek began, his voice translated into all major human languages simultaneously. I am Admiral Varek of the United Galactic Fleet. Your planet is now under complete blockade. Your defenses are insignificant. Your technology is primitive. Your options are limited to one surrender. You will submit to immediate occupation, resource extraction, and population management. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization. He paused, allowing the gravity of the situation to sink in. Standard procedure dictated, allowing the primitive species time to panic, argue amongst themselves, and ultimately submit. Varek had overseen this process 17 times before. The results were always the same. Except this time. After precisely 3 seconds of silence, a single human voice responded across all frequencies simultaneously. We surrender. Transmission over. No panic, no questions, no pleas for mercy or offers of negotiation. Just those 4 words spoken calmly, almost casually, then silence. Varek's ridged brow furrowed. He glanced at the communication officer, who confirmed the transmission had indeed originated from Earth, specifically from what humans called the United Nations in New York City. Demand clarification, Varek ordered. Request immediate audience with Earth leadership. The communication officer tried repeatedly to re-establish contact. Minutes stretched into an hour. Nothing but silence from the planet below. Something is wrong, Commander Salia said, moving to Varek's side. No primitive species simply accepts conquest without question. Varek's eyes narrowed. Prepare a landing party. Target their primary government center, New York City. I want boots on the ground within the hour. The streets of Manhattan lay empty under the shadow of the alien dropship. Buildings stood intact, vehicles remained where they had apparently been abandoned. Storefronts displayed their wares behind unbroken glass. But of humans themselves, there was no sign. Admiral Varek, who had insisted on leading the landing party personally, moved cautiously down Fifth Avenue, his sidearm drawn, flanked by elite guards from each of the 5 empires. Commander Salia followed closely, her handheld scanner sweeping continuously for life signs. Impossible, Varek muttered as they approached the United Nations building. A city of this size cannot be evacuated without detection. Our blockade was in place for 7 standard days before transmission. No ships left the planet. They entered the UN headquarters, footsteps echoing through abandoned hallways. Conference rooms stood ready for meetings that would never take place. Computer terminals remained active, screens displaying routine information. In the General Assembly Hall, a document had been left prominently on the central podium. Rocco, who had accompanied the landing party despite his non-combat role, approached and examined the paper. A single phrase, he reported. We were here. Search the entire building, Varek commanded, frustration evident in his voice. Find me 1 human, just 1. The search proved fruitless, as did the subsequent exploration of hospitals, residential buildings, subway stations, and infrastructure centers. New York City, a metropolis that had housed millions, stood completely abandoned, yet utterly intact. In the tunnels beneath the city, Lieutenant Rico's instruments detected anomalous energy readings. Admiral, he called, voice echoing in the underground passage. These signatures, they're unlike anything in our database, not purely technological. Almost as if what Lieutenant Varek demanded. Rico's compound eyes reflected the dim emergency lighting. As if the energy itself is alive, sentient perhaps. Commander Salia approached an overturned vehicle near one of the subway entrances. Its radio still functioned, playing a human musical composition in an endless loop. The lyrics, translated through her neural implant, spoke of fantasy and reality, of escape and truth. Is this just fantasy, caught in a landslide? No escape from reality? Admiral, she called, I believe we should consider the possibility that the humans have developed some form of cloaking technology. Perhaps they're still here, observing us, invisible to our scanners. Varek scoffed, though the suggestion had merit. Deploy molecular detection drones. If there's a single human cell within this city, I want it found. Over the next 12 hours, scout teams were dispatched to major human population centers across the planet: London, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow, Buenos Aires, Cairo. Each team reported the same findings: intact infrastructure, abandoned vehicles, active power grids, but not a single human being. Aboard the Oblivion's Mercy, the war room had transformed into an investigation center. Holographic displays showed live feeds from teams planetside, all reporting identical conditions. Confusion spread through the ranks. Even the most battle-hardened veterans found the situation unsettling. A planet-wide disappearance violated every known law of physics and strategic doctrine. A medical drone analyzing samples collected from an alien Marine's uniform after returning from Earth reported an anomaly. Microscopic traces detected, the AI announced. Nanoscale particles of unknown composition, not matching any known biological or technological database entries. Varek ordered immediate isolation protocols. Whatever had happened to Earth's population, he would not allow it to affect his fleet. That night, as the blockade maintained its vigilant watch over the abandoned planet, the first dreams began. A Syrian navigator reported visions of a red canyon under two moons, a landscape that existed nowhere in charted space. A Vegan weapons officer described memories of swimming in an ocean, though Vegans were desert dwellers with no history of aquatic activity. An Arcturian communications specialist reported hearing children's laughter in her quarters, though no children were aboard any vessel in the fleet. By morning, Admiral Virek faced a crisis. Reports flooded in from across the fleet crew members, experiencing phantom sensations, speaking words in human languages they had never studied, craving foods they had never tasted. Lieutenant Rico had isolated himself in his laboratory, working frantically to identify the mysterious particles. When Varek demanded an update, the bioengineer's response was troubling. "I've isolated the particles, Admiral. I'm calling them Humalith. They appear to be self-assembling nanites of unprecedented sophistication. And they're changing." "Changing how?" Varek demanded. Rico's compound eyes failed to meet Virek's gaze. "They're adapting to our biology, rewriting DNA. And they seem to carry information, memories perhaps." On the command deck, an Ilian ensign suddenly began humming a melody, a human lullaby no alien should have known. In the mess hall, a Centauran requested coffee, a beverage he had never tasted. Throughout the massive dreadnought voices, speaking English, Mandarin, Hindi, and dozens of other Earth languages could be heard from crew members who had never set foot on the planet. Commander Salia, against direct orders, had preserved several samples of the Humalith particles. In her private quarters, she studied them, obsessively watching as they reconfigured themselves in response to different stimuli. They weren't merely machines, they seemed to possess a form of collective intelligence, communicating with each other across impossible distances. When Varek discovered her unauthorized research, his rage was cold and dangerous. "You risk the entire fleet," he hissed, scales bristling along his neck. "I'm trying to understand what we're facing," Salia replied, her skin rippling with determination patterns. "These particles, they're not weapons. They're messengers." "Messengers carrying what?" Salia's gaze was steady. "Humanity itself." The Admiral faced an impossible decision. Fleet protocol dictated that in cases of unknown biological contamination, sterilization was mandatory, not just of the target planet, but of any affected vessels. With reports of anomalous behavior spreading throughout the blockade, the logical course would be to destroy multiple ships of his own fleet. Yet Commander Salia warned that aggressive action might trigger an escalation. Whatever these particles are, they respond to threats. Weapons fire might catalyze a transformation we cannot predict or control. Varek, for the first time in his centuries of command, found himself paralyzed by uncertainty. His neural implant buzzed with contradictory impulses. Maintain fleet integrity at all costs, preserve the mission, protect his crew, obey protocol. In secret, Celia continued her studies. The humalith particles seemed drawn to neural tissue, but their effects weren't destructive. They didn't replace host DNA so much as enhance it, integrate with it. And each particle contained fragments of human consciousness, memories, emotions, knowledge, experiences. "They've found a way to digitize themselves," she whispered to Rico during a clandestine meeting. "Not to fight us, but to join us." Rico, whose own research had led him to similar conclusions, clicked his mandibles nervously. "The Admiral will never accept this. He sees only a threat to be eliminated. Then we must make him understand before it's too late." 3 days after the initial landing, Varek called a full fleet assembly. The commanders of all 10,000 vessels gathered virtually in the war room of the Oblivion's Mercy. The atmosphere was tense, rumors having spread throughout the Armada. "We face an unprecedented situation," Varek began his voice, carrying to every ship in the blockade. "Earth appears abandoned, yet we detect anomalous particles that may represent a new form of biological warfare. I have decided—" He never finished the sentence. Lieutenant Rico stepped forward, activating a holographic display that projected his findings to the entire fleet. "Honored commanders," the alien said, his voice steady despite the treason he was committing, "what we face is not warfare, but transformation. The humalith particles are human-engineered, yes, but their purpose is not destruction. They were designed to evacuate humanity, to translate them from physical form to a molecular state capable of traversing space without ships." Gasps and murmurs spread throughout the virtual assembly. "But that's not all," Rico continued. "They're also designed to convert compatible hosts us into vessels for human consciousness, not as parasites, but as partners in a new hybrid species." Varek's face darkened with rage. "This is treason, Lieutenant. You spread dangerous misinformation that undermines fleet discipline." He turned to his security officers. "Arrest Lieutenant Rico and Commander Celia for sedition. They will be executed according to fleet protocol." Security personnel moved forward, but suddenly froze as warning klaxons blared throughout the dreadnought. On the main view screen, a startling image appeared. All 10,000 ships of the blockade had rotated their weapon systems, now targeting each other, rather than Earth. "What is happening?" Varek demanded. The weapons officer, eyes wide with shock, reported, "Sir, all fleet weapon systems have been overridden. They're locked onto our own vessels." A soft voice spoke from the back of the war room. Commander Celia, flanked by security officers who made no move to restrain her. "It's already happened, Admiral," she said softly. "The humalith particles have integrated with our ship's AI systems, just as they're beginning to integrate with our biology. They don't want to destroy us. They're inviting us to join them." Vrek turned to the weapons officer. "Override the systems, target Earth, I order you to fire." The officer's fingers moved across the control panel, but nothing responded. "All systems locked, Admiral." At that moment, a blinding light engulfed the holographic representation of Earth, expanding outward until it encompassed the entire blockade. Every being aboard every ship felt a momentary sensation of disintegration, of being unmade at the molecular level, and then reassembled. When the light faded, Earth remained in its orbit, serene and untouched. The blockade also remained 10,000 ships positioned exactly as before. Yet something fundamental had changed. Admiral Varek awoke in his private quarters, aboard the Oblivion's Mercy. His first sensation was wrongness. His body felt different, alien to itself. Rising shakily, he approached the reflective surface of the viewport. The face that stared back was still predominantly Arcturian, with its distinctive scales and ridge patterns. But subtle changes had occurred. His previously slit-pupilled yellow eyes now contained rings of brown iris. His hands, when he raised them to his face, showed altered joint structures more similar to human appendages. Throughout the fleet, similar awakenings occurred. Officers and crew members discovered themselves transformed, not replaced, but merged. Memories remained intact, but New ones had been added. Knowledge of Earth languages, cultures, art, and history now resided alongside their original training and experiences. In the war room, the representatives of the five empires gathered once more, each bearing the marks of transformation. Commander Salia entered last her Centauran form, now displaying distinctive human characteristics. Her skin no longer merely rippling with emotion patterns, but also showing subtle shifts in coloration, akin to human blushing. "What have you done?" Varek demanded, his voice hoarse. Salia smiled a distinctly human expression. "Not me, Admiral. Them. Us. They realized long ago that conventional warfare was a losing proposition against a superior force. So they found another way." "Integration," whispered Rico, examining his altered limbs with scientific curiosity rather than horror. "Precisely," Salia nodded. "They didn't fight the invasion, they surrendered to it completely. And in that surrender, achieved a victory more complete than conquest could ever be." She addressed the assembled representatives in perfect English. "Welcome home." Home. Varek echoed, still struggling to reconcile his dual consciousness. "Earth was never our destination," Salia explained. "It was merely our point of origin. The Humolith transformation was humanity's escape plan, centuries in the making. When your fleet arrived, it provided the perfect vector for expansion." Understanding dawned across faces throughout the room. The blockade was exactly what they needed, a means of transit to the stars far more efficient than conventional spacecraft. 10,000 vessels each, returning to a different corner of the galaxy, each carrying the seeds of human consciousness, merged with your own. In the following days, as the transformed fleet prepared to disperse, Varek struggled with his new reality. The human memories and emotions that now resided alongside his Arcturian consciousness were disorienting, sometimes overwhelming. He found himself humming Earth melodies, craving human foods, dreaming human dreams. Most disturbing were the new emotions: empathy, nostalgia, hope, emotions that had no place in the mind of a military commander. Yet he could not deny their power. 1 month after the transformation, a lone scout ship disengaged from the main fleet, its engines powering up for the journey to the Milky Way's core. Aboard were the first colony of what Salia had termed Humalians, the hybrid species born of molecular fusion between invaders and invaded. Varek watched from the command deck of the Oblivion's Mercy as the scout ship vanished into hyperspace. "Where are they going?" he asked Salia, who stood beside him, her transformed appearance now seeming natural, even beautiful to his altered perspective. "To seed new Earth," she replied. "The humans didn't just preserve themselves, they created a blueprint for countless new worlds. Each ship in this fleet will carry that blueprint to a different sector of the galaxy. And the original humans, the ones who engineered this transformation." Salia's expression grew thoughtful. "Their physical forms are gone, yes. But in a very real sense, they're still here." She touched her temple. "In us. Their memories, their creativity, their capacity for adaptation, it lives on in this new hybrid form. They sacrificed their bodies to preserve their essence." Vrek considered this. "A victory without weapons." "The ultimate victory," Salia corrected. "Not conquest, but continuation. Not submission, but synthesis." As the rest of the fleet prepared for departure, signals began arriving from distant sectors of the galaxy. Other armadas, other civilizations drawn to investigate the suddenly silent Earth, receiving the same silent invitation that had transformed the United Galactic Fleet. Varek, watching the data stream in, felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of warfare acceptance. The rigid military logic that had defined his existence was giving way to something more fluid, more adaptive. He was still himself, yet also something new, something with the potential to evolve beyond the limitations of his original form. "What happens now?" he asked, not just of Salia, but of the human consciousness that now resided within his own mind. The answer came not as words but as understanding. "Now we grow. Now we change. Now we become what neither of us could have been alone." Throughout the vast emptiness of space, 10,000 ships dispersed, each carrying the seeds of a new civilization, no longer conquerors, no longer even aliens to each other, but pioneers of a hybrid species destined to reshape the galaxy. And on Earth, now empty of human presence yet preserved intact automatic systems, continued to broadcast a simple message to the stars. We were here. Now we are everywhere. In the war room of the Oblivion's Mercy, now transformed into a planning chamber for colonial expeditions, Salia stood before the holographic representation of the Milky Way. Thousands of points of light marked the destinations of the former blockade vessels, each now carrying human-alien hybrids to new worlds. Lieutenant Rico approached his transformed physiology, adapting more rapidly than most, his scientist's mind, embracing the possibilities of their new existence. The Fleet Council is ready to vote on the dispersal patterns, he informed her. Salia nodded, still marveling at how quickly former enemies had become collaborators. The five empires, once bound only by military necessity, were now linked by something far more profound: shared consciousness, shared purpose, shared future. Admiral Virek entered last, his posture still military precise, but his expression softened by human influence. Commander, he acknowledged Salia, the title now a formality, rather than a designation of rank. In their new society, hierarchy was giving way to specialization based on individual abilities. The scout ship has successfully established the first colony, Salia announced. New Earth Prime is already taking shape on a world that once would have been deemed unsuitable for any single species, but perfect for our hybrid physiology. Vrek studied the galactic map, noting the vast distances their transformed fleet would travel. We will be separated by light years, he observed. How will we maintain cohesion? Salia smiled, the expression now natural on her partially human features. The humalith particles allow for quantum entanglement. Distance is no barrier to communication or consciousness transfer. Indeed, this was the most profound discovery of their transformation. The nanites that had merged human and alien DNA also maintained connections across vast distances. Thoughts, memories, experiences could be shared instantly between Humalian colonies, regardless of physical separation. A collective consciousness, Rico mused, yet one that preserves individual identity. Precisely, Salia agreed. Unity without uniformity, diversity without division. For Virek, this concept remained challenging. 3 centuries of military conditioning had taught him that uniformity was strength, that diversity invited weakness. Yet his newly integrated human aspects whispered otherwise, that adaptation was the true path to survival, that evolution required variation. The Syrian colonies report successful integration with local ecosystems, an officer announced, indicating a cluster of stars near the galaxy's edge. Their hybrid physiology allows them to thrive in conditions that would have been lethal to either species individually. Similar reports came from throughout the transformed fleet. The Vegan hybrids had developed enhanced photosynthetic capabilities. The Ilian hybrids displayed unprecedented neurological complexity. The Centauran hybrids exhibited emotional range that would have been impossible in their original forms. Vrek found himself increasingly drawn to these reports, fascinated by the potential of what they were becoming. The military strategist in him recognized the evolutionary advantages, while the newly emergent human aspects appreciated the beauty of such transformation. One evening, as the Oblivion's Mercy prepared for its own journey to a distant star system, Virek found Salia in the observation deck, gazing at the now empty Earth. "Do you ever wonder," he asked, "if this was their plan all along? If humans engineered their own transformation, knowing we would eventually come?" Salia's skin rippled with thoughtful patterns. "The memories I've inherited suggest they faced extinction multiple times. Environmental collapse, nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence risks. Perhaps they realized that biological evolution alone wasn't enough. So they evolved beyond biology," Virek concluded, "beyond the limitations of a single form. And beyond the conflicts that arise from difference, Salia added. Our 5 empires warred for millennia because our biologies were incompatible, our perspectives irreconcilable. Now, we carry multiple perspectives within each individual. Vrek considered this. War becomes impossible when the enemy is also yourself. Precisely. As the Oblivion's Mercy finally disengaged from Earth, orbit setting course for a star system 3,000 light-years distant, Vrek experienced a sensation entirely new to him: anticipation without anxiety, purpose without conquest. The ship that had been designed as an instrument of destruction now carried the seeds of creation. The crew, that had been trained for warfare, now prepared for cultivation. And Vrek himself, once the perfect embodiment of military logic, now found himself planning gardens rather than battle formations. Throughout the galaxy, similar transformations occurred as the dispersed fleet carried the Humalian synthesis to worlds that had never known either human or alien presence. Each colony adapted to its environment, developing unique characteristics while maintaining the quantum connection that united them across vast distances. And from other galaxies, other civilizations observed these changes with growing interest. Some, perceiving threat, dispatched their own armadas to investigate. Others, recognizing opportunity, sent emissaries. All received the same silent invitation that had transformed the United Galactic Fleet: we surrender, we welcome, we become. 3 standard years after the transformation, the Oblivion's Mercy, now renamed Synthesis, established the 100th Humalian colony on a world orbiting a binary star. The settlement took root quickly, the hybrid colonists adapting to the planet's unique conditions with remarkable speed. Vrek, who had remained aboard to oversee the establishment of multiple colonies, found himself increasingly drawn to the surface of this particular world. Something about its red canyons and twin moons resonated with both his original Arcturian consciousness and his integrated human aspects. This was in my dreams, he realized, standing at the edge of a vast canyon as 2 moons rose above the horizon. Before the transformation, I dreamed of this place. Salia, who had accompanied him to the surface, nodded. Many of us did. The Humalith particles carried not just human memories, but human potential, their hopes, their aspirations, the worlds they imagined, but never lived to see. So we're building their dream worlds. And our own, Salia corrected. That's the beauty of synthesis. It's not human domination or alien resistance. It's a genuinely new creation that honors both origins while transcending them. Vrek found himself smiling an expression that would have been impossible with his original Arcturian physiology. I spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of conquest, he mused. Now I find creation infinitely more satisfying. Because creation expands possibilities, while conquest narrows them, Salia suggested. Every world we seed becomes something unique, something that could not have existed without this merger of species. As twilight deepened into night, the settlement below them illuminated the valley lights twinkling in patterns that mirrored the stars above. Humalian children, the first generation born, rather than transformed, played in the central plaza, their physiology even more perfectly balanced between human and alien aspects. Vrek watched them with a sensation he eventually identified as pride. Not the pride of a conqueror, but of a creator, of someone who had contributed to something larger than himself, something that would continue long after he was gone. They will go further than we can imagine, he said softly. Salia's skin rippled with agreement patterns. That's what parenthood means, I think. Creating something that will exceed your own limitations. The concept of parenthood, of generational continuation, rather than merely individual survival, was another gift from the human aspects of their merged consciousness. The 5 original species had reproduced through various means, but none had developed the emotional attachment to offspring that characterized human families. Now, throughout the Humalian colonies, new social structures emerged that honored this human tradition while incorporating the varied reproductive strategies of the alien species. The result was unprecedented forms of kinship families, linked not merely by genetics, but by chosen affinities, shared consciousness, and quantum entanglement. Back aboard the Synthesis, preparing for departure to establish the next colony, Varek reviewed reports from settlements throughout the galaxy. Each had developed in unique ways, adapting to local conditions while maintaining the core Humalian identity. Some colonies had further integrated with indigenous life forms on their adopted worlds, adding new biological components to the original human-alien synthesis. Others had developed specialized physiologies for extreme environments, deep ocean trenches, high radiation zones, microgravity habitats. All remain connected through the quantum entanglement of the humalith particles, sharing discoveries, experiences, and evolutionary adaptations across vast distances instantaneously. Knowledge acquired by one colony became immediately available to all, creating an unprecedented rate of cultural and technological advancement. "We've received another signal," Rico reported, joining Varek on the command deck. "A new armada approaches the Milky Way, species designation unknown, but preliminary scans suggest biological organization unlike anything we've encountered." Varek nodded, unsurprised. Word of the transformation had spread throughout neighboring galaxies, drawing both the curious and the cautious. "Standard protocol?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," Rico confirmed. "No resistance, no aggression. The invitation has been extended." The invitation, the same silent offer that had transformed their own fleet. "We surrender. We welcome. We become." Some approaching civilizations accepted, immediately recognizing the evolutionary advantages of synthesis. Others responded with hostility, attempting to destroy what they perceived as a threat to their biological purity. None succeeded. The humalith particles simply adapted to each new form of attack, incorporating defensive measures into the next generation of syntheses. Not conquest through force, but conversion through adaptation. Not victory through destruction, but transcendence through integration. As the synthesis departed, the binary star system setting course for the next world, marked for colonization, Varek stood at the view screen, watching the stars streak past. Within him, Arcturian strategic brilliance and human creative potential worked in perfect harmony, calculating trajectories, while simultaneously imagining the unique civilizations that would arise on each new world. He was no longer merely Admiral Varek of the Fourth Armada, nor was he truly human. He was something new, a synthesis that honored both origins while transcending their limitations. And across the vast expanse of the galaxy, millions of others like him were seeding worlds with this new potential, creating civilizations that could never have existed through conquest alone. The irony was not lost on him. The United Galactic Fleet had come to Earth seeking domination and resource extraction. Instead, they had become the vehicle for the most profound transformation in galactic history, not the end of humanity, but its rebirth in a form that could truly inherit the stars. And somewhere in the quantum connections that linked all Humalians across space and time, the original consciousness that had engineered this transformation continued to exist, not as ghosts or memories, but as active participants in an ongoing evolution. "We were here," the message from Earth had stated. "Now we are everywhere." Looking out at the infinite possibilities spreading before them, Varek understood the truth of those words. The transformation continued expanding, adapting, becoming something greater with each new synthesis. Not an ending, but a beginning.